How did Darth Malgus literally become too powerful for the Sith Empire? Greetings again, and welcome back to our archives. The Great Galactic War, which began in the year 3601 BBY, saw Vitiate's reconstituted Sith Empire return to the galaxy. The Empire was a powerful force to be reckoned with, and for the first time in history, they were just as powerful as the Republic, and perhaps more importantly, just as powerful as the Jedi. The Empire formally introduced itself with a series of blitzkrieg raids across the galaxy, which began with the reclaiming of their home planet of Korriban. Many of these raids were led by the infamous warrior Darth Malgus, a Sith apprentice like no other of his time. Malgus was a mountain of a man who had a potent connection to the dark side because of his seemingly bottomless well of rage and dedication. Unfortunately, the rest of the Sith Empire did not share in Malgus' strengths, and so Malgus would eventually outgrow them, becoming too strong for the Empire that he served. So join us today, my friends, as we attempt to uncover the strange story of Malgus and his power, as well as how his power grew astronomically, forcing him to break away from the shackles of the empire that he once served, to create something that he believed was beautiful, realizing that the Sith were flawed, but not beautiful in the conventional way. Beautiful because of what he could achieve with the power that he commanded. Malgus was a man with a single pursuit: to break his own limitations, even if those limitations were the Sith Empire that he once loved, calling it the instrument in which he conducted the purpose for which he was born: war. To understand the idea of Malgus, one needs to fully grasp how he viewed the galaxy, the Force, and especially war. The Sith cared for only one thing: strength in its rawest, most physical sense. Unlike many Sith, Malgus actually had something of an honor code. He believed in glory through battle, and he showed respect to those he considered worthy warriors, even if that included the Jedi. And Malgus always kept his word. He viewed the Force as a source of conflict, admitting to the dichotomy of the light and the dark side, and stating that some Jedi were quite powerful in the Force. Even if the Jedi were fools, Malgus believed that the conflict between the light and the dark side of the Force was what gave strength and allowed the galaxy to grow and prosper. As such, peace to Malgus was an affront to progress. This was the unforgivable sin that the Jedi commit, allowing them to live a life of pacifism, a lie, an offense to their gifts. Malgus wore his strength right on his chest, spreading his arms so that all could see. He invited challenge for anyone who opposed him, and publicly crushed all opposition. If we were to compare a Sith like Dooku to scalpels, cutting away at strategic parts of their enemy, and others like a deadly venom like Sidious, a Sith who was able to seep into the very veins of his enemies, the arteries of his opposition, then Malgus would be a hulking battering ram, a force of nature, one whose sole purpose is to achieve strength to break his enemies, turning the bones of his foes to dust upon impact. And this is exactly how Malgus approached war with the Republic. Unfortunately, this is also how he approached just about every situation in his daily life, especially how he dealt with his comrades. We say unfortunately because Malgus was something of an oddity amongst the Sith Empire. The Empire was for the first time in thousands of years a properly run government, and because of this, politics were abundant. Physical strength could only get you so far at the Sith of this time. You needed to know people. You needed strings to pull, people to bribe, threaten, and even covertly assassinate to get your way, to break through the bureaucracy. The Sith Empire was completely overrun by politics, especially once Vitiate took a step back and gave control of the Empire to the Dark Council. This collection of 12 Sith Lords were some of the most spiteful and petty beings that the galaxy has ever seen, save for only a few, including the Sith Lord Darth Mar. The seats at the council were constantly rotating, as new Sith blossomed through malicious social practices. Malgus, however, had no respect nor a talent for politics. It was impossible to make moves against rivals without stoking an open conflict within the Sith, and because rivals often had the backing of the Sith in a much higher rank, they could invoke disaster. Because of this, Malgus was never able to take revenge or issue a formal challenge to those who angered him within the Empire if their rank was high enough. And as such, Malgus distanced himself from all of it and focused on the battlefield. It was in this realm that his successes were numerous and valuable. The entire Sith population knew Malgus due to his wartime exploits. Like everything else in life, he rose in social ranking not through politics, but through sheer, brute, undeniable strength. The reputation he garnered was itself enough to boost him into higher positions. This incited jealousy in other lords of the Sith, those that began to view Malgus as a legitimate threat. And as such, many of them would use their favors and silver tongues to undermine Malgus's efforts to make a fool of him in public. Malgus was an undeniably excellent warrior who was constantly inhibited by the meddling of politicians. One of these was Darth Andras, Malgus's biggest rival. Unlike our Iron Warrior, this Sith Lord was a skilled political manipulator, and he would use this leverage, curry favor from the Council, and higher-ups within the Sith Empire to impede Malgus during his war campaigns. The Dark Council was pleased to do so as they saw Malgus as a legitimate threat. The Council would even send Lord Andras to the front lines to irritate Malgus because they knew how much he was hated. On one occasion, during Malgus's assault of the world of Ord Ramada, Lord Andras took credit for a victory and then slinked off to speak with the Dark Council. When he did this, the Dark Council delayed sending material support to the front lines, and the troops' supplies were dwindling. And if they didn't get there soon, they would soon lose the world. In his campaign journal, Malgus would later write this: "I instead have sent my request to War Minister Sherry's, but I have received no answer. Politics sicken me. Begging for resources from a bureaucrat is not a fitting role for a Sith Lord. All such functionaries should be honored to do my bidding, and should scramble to see it done. For we Sith Lords are elevated above non-Force users, those who staff our galactic machine. But neither Minister Sherry's nor Grand Moff's can do anything for me if other Sith Lords have already placed claims on his resources." Unfortunately, those supplies would never arrive to Malgus. An important confidant of Malgus by the name of Darth Venomal would die in this ensuing battle, and the Sith forces would be driven off of this world in a humiliating defeat. Malgus never forgot this, and considered it to be the loss of his honor. There were many cases where politicians meddled with Malgus, but he muscled his way through the war, taking victories despite setbacks. However, this all came to a head during the Sacking of Coruscant. In a despicable, yet brilliant maneuver, the Sith Empire sued for a ceasefire and peace negotiations on the world of Alderaan. Satele Shan and the Grand Master of the Order, along with many members of the Jedi High Council, went to commit to this peace. However, the Sith Empire went behind their backs, and Malgus led an assault on the Republic capital, beginning with the Jedi Temple. After he boldly walked through the front door, he looked into the eyes of the only Jedi he considered there to be a worthy challenge, Ven Zalo, and then he ordered a captured Republic dropship break right in and carry a payload of 50 Dark Lords, including his rival, Darth Andras. The battle was fierce, and in the end, it cost the injury of Malgus's lover, Elena, but the Sith managed to take Coruscant, and Darth Andras would later take the Supreme Chancellor hostage. By the end of it, Malgus ordered the orbital bombardment of Coruscant to commence, only to have his order refused by the Fleet Admiral. Malgus was then told that the Dark Council had issued new orders, which were occupational procedures rather than a destruction of Coruscant. Malgus's dream, and not Coruscant, was crushed before him. He had fantasized over watching the world city burn, marking the end of the Republic. But now he was being told that the Empire was using the capital world as leverage for peace. To say that Malgus was enraged would be an understatement. Not only did his grandest accomplishment now mean nothing, but the Dark Council had violated the ways of the Sith by negotiating peace, and therefore contradicting the first line of the Great Code: peace is a lie. Malgus believed that the Sith Empire had served the Force by stoking the galactic conflict. But now the unforgivable sin committed by the Jedi made Malgus hate them in the first place was now done by the Sith. Peace. To Darth Andras, Malgus would say this, which perfectly captured his anger: "You are a mongrel, Andras, and you and those like you have mongrelized the purity of the Empire with your pollution, trading strength for wretched peace." Now that his glorious empire had thrown their lot in with the offensive lie that was peace, Malgus was done. This was the final straw. Malgus would then murder his lover Elena, believing that she was making him weak, and by splitting his devotion between her and being a Dark Lord, he solidified his future. He then gained a significant boost in his power due to his anguish over her loss, but also a new devotion to the dark side. His beliefs cemented. The power boost allowed him to go on a rampage, killing all of the Sith politicians, letting his fury that had been stewing for decades unleash, cleaving through his enemies, those that had plotted against him from the shadows. Once this was done, the Cold War would begin, as Malgus disappeared into the unknown regions, conquering uncharted territory for the Sith. But not the old Empire, for a new Empire. But while Malgus was out there, he was also forging new alliances. Unlike many other Sith, Malgus had a great tolerance for alien species. He often employed the use of non-human mercenaries and bounty hunters. This made him stand out even more than he originally did among the Sith. Through this tolerance, he forged alliances with militaries, building a large following. He then returned to the Sith Empire and used his own position on the Dark Council to inspire a coup. He announced that he would be starting his own empire, a fresher, stronger one. He then promised the Sith that by allying with an alien race and embracing change, that they would grow stronger, and that the Dark Council was weak and ineffectual. Malgus had also utilized ancient Rakatan technology and created a fleet inspired by Revan. However, despite all of this, Malgus never gained a substantial enough following to make his dreams a reality as an emperor, gaining him the title as the False Emperor Malgus. His new empire was a failure, and he would be defeated in his space station, faking his death as the station exploded. Malgus' story is still currently ongoing, but the reality is that Malgus as an individual became far too strong for the Sith Empire and had to break away. What's interesting about this entire story is that Malgus happens to be one of Sidious's favorite Sith. Sidious often praises the insights of Malgus and the entire wholehearted desire for Vader to gain inspiration from him. This is incredibly ironic since Palpatine rose to power through nothing but political intrigue and manipulation, and Palpatine only used his raw power when he deemed it necessary. However, it's likely that Palpatine shares a kindred spirit with Malgus, believing that he is above the petty squabbles of lesser beings. Once Sidious became the Emperor, he used politics to keep his Grand Moffs and other servants fighting amongst themselves, currying favor for the one true Emperor. In that way, Sidious was not adhering to politics, but rather controlling them, and using it as a tool. If only Malgus had shown this kind of grace and patience, he may have gotten much farther with his goals with the Sith Empire, maybe becoming a true Sith Emperor. It's a tragic truth of the Sith that has been repeated throughout history time and time again. Might in the Force means nothing when there are more against you than there are for you. The greatest Sith Lords in history were brought down when many of their lesser enemies in the Jedi united against them. 1-to-1, the Sith power is unmatched, but wars are not fought by one being. I think that Malgus has an incredibly unique view on the Force and perspective. He explains quite uniquely what it means to him to be a Sith, while he still carries with him a sense of supremacy. Malgus also has honor, and believes that those who act without it are nothing but mongrels. There was a time when Malgus even spared a Jedi's life because he kept his word, wanting to save the life of Alina, who the Jedi was holding hostage. Malgus as a Sith Lord believed in a higher purpose rather than power for power's sake. He truly wanted to see the progress of the Sith Empire and the growth of the galaxy through conflict. In Malgus's eyes, if conflict bred power, then peace meant natural weakness. I like that Malgus actually appreciated strength in all of its forms, whether they were Jedi, Sith, droid, or alien. He respected those that proved themselves, which was why he was obsessed with fighting Venzalo. He would go so far as to incline within his head that he respected the Jedi Master, especially when he didn't back away when the dropship came crashing through the doors of the Jedi Temple. Malgus respected strength in every form that he saw it. I would love to see what sort of terrifying empire Malgus would have formed had he been Emperor. But as always, we would love to hear your thoughts on the subject down below. And until next time, my friends, thank you for joining us today in the archives with this holocron, and may the Force be with you.